free being a word that doesn't get thrown around much up here. This is Beacon Hill, the namesake of Beacon Hill Junior. It's one of the oldest neighborhoods in the city, and it is categorically the most expensive. How expensive exactly, I am literally not supposed to tell you. There's nothing stopping anybody here from firing up Zillow whenever you want, but the HOA up here has made it pretty clear they don't really like us talking about housing prices. But down on Boston Common, the Frog Pond, that's free. Couple inches deep, it's a splashing pool. It's a good way for kids to beat the summer heat when it inevitably starts feeling like August again. Eventually, summer will end, the temperature will start to plummet down to something nice and frosty, like I prefer. Come winter, they'll just erect a steel railing around the perimeter of that pond. They will let it freeze over, and it becomes a nice skating rink. And off to our left, well, on the front lawn, you've got our 35th president, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, from Brookline, Massachusetts. Behind that, Massachusetts State House. This is where our current governor, Maura Healey, has her office. First woman we have ever elected governor in the state's history. Eventually, of course, her term will be up. The big white doors at the top of these steps will open. You'll see them momentarily. Maura Healey will come down the steps. She will cross the street. She will pass by the Robert Gould Shaw 54th Memorial, coming up off to our right. Then proceed down onto Boston Common, where she will symbolically become a regular citizen again, a commoner, if you will. The Robert Gould Shaw Memorial, by the way, is dedicated to the first all-volunteer African-American military unit, raised and trained here in the North to fight in the South during the American Civil War, and their commander, Robert Gould Shaw. If any of you ever saw a 1989 Civil War movie called Glory, it was all about those guys, and you see that right at the very end. If you haven't, you really should. It's a great movie. Massachusetts Firefighters Memorial, off to our left. Dedicated to every Commonwealth of Massachusetts firefighter who's ever lost their lives in the line of duty. Although the earliest names would be Boston specifically. The Boston Fire Department, founded in 1678, was the first paid professional fire department in the country. Honestly, the fact that this city is almost 400 years old means it got in on the ground floor of a couple of things. Does anybody here like chocolate? I have been assured Boston had the first chocolate factory in the United States. You ever heard of something called the Toll House cookie? That was us. This question tends to be extremely hit or miss. I keep thinking about maybe not asking it anymore, but do we have any gamers on board? You ever play Fallout 4? Oh, you missed out. You got to traipse through the radiated ruins of nuclear post-apocalyptic Boston. You get shot at constantly, chased around by radiation zombies. The main town in that setting is something called Diamond City, because it's built within the walls of Fenway Park. You meet a character named Piper, runs a newspaper called Public Occurrences, which is based on a real-life Boston newspaper called Public Occurrences, both foreign and domestic. A little bit of a mouthful. Almost any English teacher today would tell you every word of that title was spelled wrong. I think I would have enjoyed the English language a little bit better back when it was still kind of multiple choice. There was a time you could spell murder with a Y and a TH and nobody cared. But that was the first multi-page newspaper in the colonies back in 1690. Oh, hey, we got kids. This is the Old West Church. This used to be a stop on the Underground Railroad here in Boston. It's a daycare center now. Oh, cool. About a month ago now, I was giving a tour for some slightly older kids. A bunch of 7th or 8th graders playing a little scavenger hunt. They had a list of items they were waiting for me to talk about, I guess to prove to their teacher that they were paying attention. The teacher promised me they weren't being graded on it, but she did show me a copy of that list. I was scrolling down it to help them out with it. Most of it was pretty straightforward, but I did pause when I got to an entry that read, and I quote, "the ugliest building in America." Not very nice, but yes, I knew which one they meant. The Hurley Building. It's a stunning example of what we call brutalist architecture. For some reason, that was big back in the 70s. In real life, that houses our Department of Mental Health Services. But if you ever saw a Scorsese film called The Departed, they used that as Massachusetts State Police Headquarters. One moment. Similar thoughts, off to our right, technically this is the Tip O'Neill Federal Building, but directly behind it is TD Garden. If you ever want to see the Bruins or the Celtics playing a home game, this would be the place. Last year, this is where the Celtics broke their tie with the Lakers when they won championship number 18. This year was not quite so successful, but that's all right. I am more than old enough to still remember very distinctly what it felt like being a Red Sox fan prior to 2004. I'm not about to turn around and start complaining that my basketball team isn't dominating the sport hard enough. The Celtics win slightly more often than anyone else, and I can be content with that. Leonard P. Zinkum, Bunker Hill Memorial Bridge off to our right. To my knowledge, still the widest cable-stayed bridge in the United States. Carries all 10 lanes of Interstate 93 over the water. It's the crown jewel of something called the Big Dig, a little public works project that we drove over at the beginning of the tour, and we'll drive over once more at the very end of the tour. It was, at the time of its completion, and may, for all I know, still be, the most expensive public works project in American history. 16 years and $21 billion. Took a 6-lane elevated highway and turned that into a 10-lane underground highway. Now, one thing, bear in mind, that figure does factor in interest, and whatever the actual number you want to put on it, it's paying off for you folks now. When this thing was built back in the 50s, the designers apparently didn't think easy direct road access from one side to the other was going to be a priority. This thing was basically a wall that choked off about 2 miles of Boston's waterfront for 50 years, and it ran right along Atlantic, the first street we crossed over when we left the aquarium. Prior to 2003, this would be a tour of the aquarium parking lot, and it wasn't even a nice parking lot back then. Because it was so much harder to access the waterfront back then, the city of Boston did not make nearly as much of a priority of taking care of it properly. They figured, who cares, it's not anyone sees it anyway. By 2003, that whole area was kind of a decrepit, rundown dump. But as soon as that highway came down, that was all open again. It became prime real estate again, pretty much overnight. Cleaning it up wasn't overnight, of course, but they've gotten it looking pretty nice these days. So, around the corner, I should probably introduce you to a few friends of mine coming up. Wait for it. Okay. May I present to you Tyrannosaurus Rex, King of the Dinosaurs. Esplanadia, Kenmore Carla, Waterfront Fonda, Miss Emma Science, Beantown Betty, Olga Ironside, and I guess that's it. The Museum of Science is one of our 3 duck stops, and more importantly, it is one of the top tourist destinations in either Boston or Cambridge, and for good reason. If you haven't visited this place before, and you have a chance to do it, I would make it a priority. The dinosaur exhibit alone would be worth the price of admission. They got a lot more than dinosaurs. About 3 weeks ago, I stuck up around after work for a 7 o'clock showing of Superman at the Ugar Amphitheater. It was good, by the way. It was really, really good. Right, Big Mike? He's a Snyder Burst guy. But I usually assume on just about any tour, most everyone on board can probably be grouped into one of 2 categories. A dinosaur fan, or a dinosaur fan who is lying to me. You never needed Scarlett Johansson to sell dinosaurs. I mean, that helps, but every kid loves dinosaurs. That is in our DNA. It's just in an awkward but inevitable quirk of biology. Kids become teenagers. Teenagers worry maybe it's not cool anymore. They act like they're over it because if they start talking about their favorite dinosaur, their friends will laugh at them. Well, I don't have any friends. So at 43 years old, there is nothing stopping me from telling you Triceratops is still my favorite. They got both a real, complete fossil and a replica in there. I'm sure there's also a Velociraptor somewhere. That thing's been pretty popular ever since Jurassic Park came out 32 years ago. Although, PSA, if you didn't know this already, Velociraptor was about the size of a golden retriever. Michael Crichton lied to you. Triceratops, that one's the real deal. I'm guessing some of you have probably heard of the Berlin Wall before, and therefore are aware that if you want to see that in person, kind of tricky today. They tore it down when I was 7. But if you take a gander off to your left, greenish concrete slab, guy with the blue hat, you're looking at a little piece of the West Berlin side right now. Kind of hard to get around that thing on a duck boat, but you're not really missing much on the Soviet side. They weren't very big fans of street art. You guys want to spend some time out on the river? We can do that. But a couple safety pointers we just have to go over first. All the land safety stuff still applies on the river. But also, if you look up, we've got life vests. Leave them alone unless Big Mike tells you to put them on. But if Big Mike does tell you that, anybody weighing 90 pounds or less will need one of these little vests up here with the dark tags. Most of them are up here on my side, but we've got 10 more in the very back. If you weigh more than 90 pounds, full-size vests have yellow tags. I promise I will talk about the Lynch Family Skate Park later. But if there is a fire on board, I've got a fire extinguisher. If somebody falls overboard, not to worry, I've got a life ring right here. There's backups to both under and behind the leftmost rear seat. And while in 31 seasons we have never actually lost one of these things, a duck boat sinking is theoretical in Boston. But since it is theoretically possible, there is a protocol for it. Roof retracts, windshield folds down, windows are already open. If Big Mike ever actually gave the order to abandon ship, these would be your primary emergency exits. Now you're just going to hear the horn blast for a second or two on the way down. And then the fun part. Okay, I'm pretty sure that went well. Okay, it went well. Driving into the water is the easy part. You can do that in a Ford Fiesta. But the rumbling you hear means that our propeller's working, which is good. Wouldn't make it very far without them. You will note this thing is turning, even though our wheels are completely useless. I guess the rudders are working. And I didn't want to call it prematurely, but we're not sinking. If it floats and it goes somewhere, congratulations, you're on a boat. Welcome to the Charles River. Excellent. So, yes. Charles River, by the way, proud to tell you, it's the cleanest urban river in the United States. A- rating from the Environmental Protection Agency. I'm especially pleased to tell you that, given that it was not always the case. It's an A- rating from the EPA today. Back in the 70s, it was a straight D. People used to say that if you ever fell into the Charles River, you were going to need to get yourself a tetanus shot afterwards. That was never true. That's not how tetanus works. Even if you could get it from the water, getting the shot after the tetanus doesn't help you. But it was pretty gross once. People used to say this was the filthiest river in the country. That was never true either. The only actual F rating I've ever heard of went to a river running through Cleveland, Ohio called the Cuyahoga. It earned that F rating when it caught fire. Not once, not twice, but 13 times. water is not flammable. Prior to the Clean Water Act of 1972, some of the stuff you could still get away with dumping into the water. Very much was. Slightly jealous, if I'm being honest. Not that I wish the Charles River was catching fire or anything, but it would have been kind of cool to see that just once. A river burning is kind of like a heavy metal cover. If you throw a boat on there, that's what we call a Viking funeral. But as far as boats on the river, we drove into the river and we're still going. One of those old town trolley buses that tried that little trick. The only thing that bus would be good for would be insurance fraud. So what's your verdict on these things? Kind of cool, right? It's an oldie but a goodie. Beacon Hilda here is a modern replica of an 83-year-old design, which mechanically speaking at least hasn't really changed that much. Hi Jesse! Alright, hasn't really come up today. Back during the Second World War, starting in 1942, General Motors cranked out about 21,000 of these things for the U.S. military. General Motors called it a DUKW. It was kind of a convoluted manufacturer's designation. Technically had nothing to do with the animal. But since it operated on land and water, the Allies just called it the Duck. Whenever they had to offload troops or supplies over the water, but there was no dock to offload onto, this thing was your answer. All a duck boat needs is a shoreline. Drives up the land, and it's a cargo truck. So take those supplies wherever they're needed, just like any other cargo truck. Horn blast coming up in a moment, by the way. 4 times on the water portion, we approach a blind corner. If Big Mike doesn't see what's on the other side, he just assumes somebody is coming, and legally he announces our approach. One thing I can tell you is waiting for us around this corner is more room, less traffic as we come out onto the Charles River proper. Also, I happened to notice when I got on this dock, we have a few kids on board. Under those circumstances, we are able to relax within safety rules just a little. Let me explain this. Big Mike has not abandoned this post. He is not committing any Coast Guard violation at all. He can still reach the steering wheel, he can still drive. But the captain's chair is temporarily vacant, and that is the best view on the entire dock, because the captain has to see everything. So if any of our younger guests would like to be captain for a second, see what the captain sees, get a taste of command, well, I'll take that as a yes. But there are a couple conditions. One junior captain at a time. Can't have multiple people standing and crowding the helm. But that one junior captain can bring up one photographer. Get this documented so you can brag to your friends about it later. If we call on anyone that where there are multiple kids in their group, we'll finish that group so the photographer doesn't have to do laps. But if you sit in that chair, you are agreeing to take a sticker. Are those terms acceptable? Then come on up. And bring your chronicler with you. How about a show of hands? Who all would like to try this after the first one? Is it a one and done? We sure back there? I see a couple kids back there. Alright, let me know if they change their minds. How about up here? Any you want to try it? It's not mandatory, don't worry. Although, you know, what do you think? What do I tell you? It's not a bad view, right? Well, you did your part, and a deal's a deal. Whenever you're ready, here is your badge of office. Watch your step on the way down. First one's a bit of a doozy. Tuck them into it. All right, once the way's clear, come on up. We got just one captain at a time, but a photographer can come up as well. That's Cambridge, Massachusetts, off to our right. I believe I mentioned earlier, that's the home of Harvard and MIT. You'll have to take my word for it on Harvard, though. To show you Harvard, we'd have to drive so far downriver that it gets so shallow we would essentially be driving again, and it would still be further inland. None of that would technically stop a duck boat, but it would have us a little late back to the aquarium. So I think we're think that you'd probably have to see that one on your own. MIT, on the other hand, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, that one is right along the shore. I hear we had another back there who wanted to try it. Set him up. You can't see MIT yet, but you will right off to your right as soon as we clear the Longfellow Bridge up ahead. How we doing?